Harnessing the Unseen Force, the Timeless Art of Momentum by Dr. Joseph Erickson. Introduction. The unseen force that shapes our lives. There's a story that comes to us from the ancient world, from the Greek colonies in what is now southern Italy. It's about a man named Milo of Croton, who would become the most dominant wrestler of his time, a man of legendary strength. He won the ancient Olympic Games 6 times, along with dozens of other championships. His strength was so great, it was said he once saved his friend, the philosopher Pythagoras, by holding up a collapsing roof so everyone could escape. How did he get so strong? Was he born a demigod? Was he the beneficiary of some divine luck? The legend of Milo gives a simpler, more profound answer. It began with a newborn calf. The story goes that one day Milo lifted the small animal onto his shoulders and carried it. The next day, he did it again. He did this every single day. As the calf grew, so did Milo. The weight he carried each day increased by a small, almost imperceptible amount. Day after day, week after week, month after month. The calf became a heifer, then a full-grown ox, and Milo, through this daily incremental practice, became strong enough to lift a full-grown ox on his shoulders. This is not a story about a miracle. It's a story about a process. It is a story about an unseen force, one that governs success and failure in all aspects of life, from building a business, to writing a book, to raising a family. We are obsessed today with the opposite of Milo's path. We are addicted to the myth of the overnight success. We scroll through social media and see the filtered highlights of other people's lives, the big breaks and the sudden windfalls. We are sold courses and hacks that promise to teach us the secret to getting rich, famous, or fulfilled right now. The truth, however, is that the easy overnight success is a myth. It's a carefully constructed narrative that we buy into because we crave instant gratification. We start a new project, a new diet, a new business. We're filled with excitement. We put in the work for a few days, maybe a few weeks, but when we don't see immediate, earth-shattering results, we get discouraged. We think this isn't working. We quit. And we look for the next big thing, the next shortcut. The Stoic philosophers had a better way. They understood that the world is divided into 2 categories, that which is in our control and that which is not. As the philosopher Epictetus taught, our power lies in our own opinions, aims, desires, and actions. Outside of our power are things like our reputation, the actions of others, and the ultimate outcomes of our efforts. The path to a good life, the Stoics argued, is found by focusing our energy exclusively on what we can control, our own actions. Milo of Croton was a living embodiment of this principle. He couldn't control whether he would win the Olympics. He couldn't control who his opponents would be. He couldn't control whether he would be injured. But he could control one thing. He could pick up the calf every single day. He wasn't focused on the outcome. He was focused on the one small, repeatable action that was entirely within his power. This brings us to the core of this book, an idea articulated by Dr. Joseph Erickson as a simple, powerful formula. Discipline times consistency times time equals momentum. This isn't a motivational platitude. It should be understood as a law of nature, as real and as powerful as the law of gravity. It is the unseen force that was at work on Milo and his ox. Discipline is the choice to do the hard thing, the necessary thing. It's the decision to pick up the calf even when you don't feel like it. Consistency is the act of showing up day after day. It's the rhythm of the work, the steady application of effort that turns a small action into a powerful habit. Time is the multiplier. It's the element that allows the small, disciplined, consistent efforts to compound on themselves, growing from a tiny calf into a formidable ox. The result of this multiplication is momentum. It's that magical point where the effort becomes seemingly effortless. It's the flywheel that after many difficult pushes begins to spin on its own. It's the wave that carries you forward. This book will not offer you any hacks or secrets. It will not promise you overnight success. Instead, it will offer you a timeless, reliable path to achieving what you want in life. We will break down this fundamental law of nature, exploring each of its components through the lens of history, philosophy, and modern science. We will learn from the triumphs and failures of the men and women who have either harnessed this force or been broken by their attempts to defy it. The journey to strength, to success, to a life of meaning is not a sprint. It is a long, steady walk. It is about showing up day after day and doing the work. It is about picking up your calf. Chapter 1: The Forge of Character. Mastering the Art of Discipline. Jerry Seinfeld had a secret. In his early days as a touring comedian, a young comic named Brad Isaac found himself backstage with the soon-to-be legend. Isaac asked him if he had any tips for a young comedian. Seinfeld's advice was deceptively simple. He said the way to be a better comic was to create better jokes. And the way to create better jokes was to write every day. He told Isaac to get a big wall calendar, one that has a whole year on one page, and hang it on a prominent wall. The next step was to get a big red magic marker. For each day that he did his task of writing, he got to put a big red X over that day. After a few days, you'll have a chain, Seinfeld said. Just keep at it, and the chain will grow longer every day. You'll like seeing that chain, especially when you get a few weeks under your belt. Your only job next is to not break the chain. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say, write a hilarious joke every day. He didn't say, feel inspired every day. He didn't say, only write when the muse strikes. He said to do the work, to show up. His only job was to not break the chain. This is the first and most critical variable in the equation of momentum. It is the foundation upon which everything else is built. It is the art of discipline. Let's be honest. The word itself, discipline, makes us flinch. We picture a drill sergeant screaming in our face, a joyless monk subsisting on bread and water, or the grim, self-flagellating promises of a New Year's resolution that we know, deep down, will be abandoned by February. We see discipline as a punishment, as a restriction, a cage we build around our desires. We have it all wrong. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is not a restriction. Discipline is freedom. It is the freedom to choose who you want to be. It is the freedom from the tyranny of your moods, the whims of your passing impulses, the persuasive voice in your head that whispers, later, tomorrow, it's not a big deal. It is the freedom that comes from being the master of your own soul, not a slave to your immediate appetites. The most powerful man in the world had to remind himself of this every single morning. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, was not a natural early riser. In his private journal, what we now call Meditations, he documented his morning struggle. He literally had to give himself a pep talk to get out of bed. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? Or is this what I was created for, to huddle under the blankets and stay warm? This wasn't self-loathing. This wasn't a joyless sense of obligation. This was Marcus forging his own character. He knew that winning the internal battle, the one against the warmth of the blankets, was the first and most important victory of the day.
He was practicing discipline, not for its own sake, but for what it would prepare him for, ruling the most powerful empire on Earth. He was choosing to be an emperor, not a coward. He was choosing action over comfort. This is the choice we all face every single day in 1,000 small ways. The choice to scroll through our phones or read a book. The choice to hit the snooze button or get up and greet the day. The choice to eat the donut or the apple. The choice to make the sales call or check our email again. Each of these choices is a single blow of the hammer in the forge of our character. One way, we forge strength, resiliency, and integrity. The other way, we forge weakness, fragility, and regret. We think these small choices don't matter. This is the lie we tell ourselves. Like a single drop of water, they seem insignificant, but 1,000,000 drops can carve a canyon. Modern science has shown that willpower, our ability to exert self-control, is like a muscle. It can be fatigued by overuse. This is why, after a long, stressful day of making difficult decisions, we are more likely to give in to temptation. We've all been there. You resist the urge to snap at your boss, you focus through a tedious meeting, you turn down the cake in the break room, and then you get home, exhausted, and find yourself eating ice cream straight from the carton. Your willpower muscle is spent. So, are we doomed? Is the only answer to become a hermit and avoid all temptation? Of course not. The secret, the one that Marcus Aurelius and Jerry Seinfeld both understood intuitively, is that the goal isn't to rely on heroic feats of willpower every minute of every day. The goal is to use an initial burst of discipline to build habits. A habit is an action that has been repeated so many times, it becomes automatic. It moves from the conscious, effortful part of our brain to the primitive, automatic part. It becomes something we just do, requiring little to no willpower. Discipline is the act of starting the engine. Habit is the engine running on its own. This is why Seinfeld's "don't break the chain" system is so brilliant. The initial discipline is required to get the chain started, but soon the motivation shifts. The game is no longer "I have to write." The game becomes "I have to not break the chain." You are no longer fighting against your laziness. You are fighting for the integrity of the chain. So how do we begin? How do we step into the forge? First, we start small, laughably small. Our ambition is our enemy at the beginning. We declare we're going to run a marathon when we haven't run a mile in a decade. We vowed to write a novel when we haven't written a paragraph in years. This is a recipe for failure. Remember Milo of Crotone? He didn't start by trying to lift the ox. He started with the calf. What is your calf? Is it doing one push-up? Is it writing one sentence? Is it meditating for 1 minute? Find the smallest possible version of your desired habit, a version so easy you can't say no. Second, we build a system. We take the decision-making out of it. We prepare the night before. Lay out your running shoes. Put the blank page and the pen on your desk. Put the book you want to read on your pillow. We create what psychologists call a bright line, a clear, unambiguous rule. I will write for 15 minutes after I drink my coffee. I will go to the gym on my way home from work on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Remove the ambiguity, and you remove the opportunity for your weaker self to negotiate. Third, we focus on the forging, not the final product. The point of discipline isn't to be perfect. You will have days where you fail. You will break the chain. The world will conspire against you. That's fine. The point is not to never get knocked down. The point is to get back up. The Stoics would say that the obstacle is the way. A missed day is not a catastrophe. It's an opportunity to practice the discipline of starting again. Discipline is the first variable in our equation because it is the only one that is entirely an act of will. Consistency requires a rhythm, and time requires patience. But discipline is a choice you make right now, in this very moment. It is the choice to be the person you want to be. It's not about being a superhero, it's about being a blacksmith. Showing up to the forge every day, stoking the fire, picking up the hammer, and striking the iron. It's not glamorous work. It's hot, sweaty, and difficult. But with each blow, something is being shaped. Something is being strengthened. Something is being created. That something is you.
Chapter 2. The Rhythm of Success. The Unsexy Power of Consistency. Stand at the edge of the Grand Canyon. Look down into that immense, gaping chasm, a mile deep, carved out of solid rock. Now ask yourself, how did this happen? Was it a single, cataclysmic event? A violent earthquake that split the earth open? A massive, world-altering explosion? No, it was the river. The humble Colorado River, flowing day after day, year after year, millennium after millennium. Each day, the river carries away a few grains of sand, a few pebbles, an amount so small as to be unnoticeable. On any given Tuesday, the canyon looks exactly as it did on Monday. For 100 years, the changes would be imperceptible to the human eye. But over the vast expanse of geologic time, the steady, relentless, consistent flow of water did what no single act of violence could. It carved a masterpiece. This is the second variable in our equation, consistency. And it is, without a doubt, the most unsexy, unglamorous, and underestimated force in the universe. If discipline is the act of stepping into the forge, consistency is the rhythm of the hammer. It's not the one mighty blow that shatters the iron, but the steady, repeated tap, tap, tap that slowly, methodically shapes it into a sword. Our culture scorns this. We celebrate the flash of lightning, not the slow, steady growth of the oak tree. We lionize the startup that gets a billion-dollar valuation in 18 months, not the family business that has served its community for 80 years. We chase the get-rich-quick scheme, the 30-day shred, the weekend seminar that will change our life forever. We are addicted to the big push, the all-nighter, the heroic burst of effort. We've all done it. Fueled by a surge of motivation, we decide this is it. This is the week we're finally going to write that business plan. We clear our schedule, we buy fancy new stationery, we stay up until 3 a.m. on Tuesday, mainlining coffee and churning out pages. We feel like a hero. On Wednesday, we're exhausted, but we manage another late night. By Thursday, the thought of looking at that document fills us with dread. By Friday, we're burnt out, resentful, and we're back to scrolling through Netflix, telling ourselves we'll get back to it when we feel inspired again. The project lies abandoned, a monument to a fleeting burst of unsustainable energy. We tried to be the earthquake. We should have been the river. The masters of every craft in every era understood this. Their lives were not a series of dramatic sprints, but a long, steady march. Consider the writer Anthony Trollope. He was one of the most prolific novelists of the Victorian era, publishing 47 novels, not to mention dozens of short stories and travel books. He did this while holding down a demanding full-time career with the British Post Office. What was his secret? A flash of divine inspiration? A tortured artistic soul who wrote in frenzied bursts? No, it was a watch. Every morning,
Trollope would sit at his desk at 5:30 a.m. with his watch in front of him. He required of himself 250 words every 15 minutes. If he finished a novel before his allotted 3 hours were up, he would immediately take out a fresh piece of paper and begin the next one. He was a craftsman. He showed up every single day and laid his bricks. A small daily task, if it be really daily, will beat the labors of a spasmodic Hercules, he wrote. His only job was to meet his quota. The result was a literary legacy that has endured for over a century. This rhythm of success is boring, and that is precisely why it is so powerful. It sidesteps the two great enemies of progress, boredom and the lure of novelty. Boredom is the great killer of dreams. The initial excitement of a new project wears off, and we are left with the mundane reality of the work itself, the middle, the long, slow grind where the results are not yet visible. We mistake this boredom for a sign that we are on the wrong path. We think, if this were my true calling, it would feel exciting all the time. This is a lie. Boredom is not a sign to stop. Boredom is the toll you pay to get to mastery. The professional shows up even when, especially when, it's boring. The second enemy is its seductive cousin, novelty. The shiny object syndrome. We're a month into our new podcast idea when suddenly we have a brilliant idea for a new app. The app idea seems so much more exciting, so much more promising. So we drop the podcast and start furiously sketching out our app. A month later, a new, even better idea strikes us. We leave behind a trail of half-finished projects, ghost towns of our own ambition. This isn't creativity. It's a form of fear. It's the ego's clever way of protecting us from the possibility of failure, from the hard work of seeing something through to the end. Consistency is the antidote. It is the commitment to the process regardless of our mood. It is the system that carries us when our willpower fails. How do we build this rhythm? First, we worship the routine. We do the same thing at the same time every day. We don't wait to see when we might have time to write or exercise or practice. We build our life around work. We create an appointment with our craft and we guard it jealously. This routine, this ritual, becomes a trigger. It tells our brain, it's time. Second, we lower the bar. The goal of consistency is not to produce a masterpiece every day. The goal is to show up. The writer Anne Lamott talks about giving yourself permission to write a shitty first draft. The painter Chuck Close said, "Inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work." If you show up, you have a chance. The muse might visit, but she has to know where to find you. She has to know you'll be at your desk. Third, we embrace the plateau. Progress is not a straight line. It's a series of leaps and long, flat plateaus. There will be weeks, maybe months, where it feels like you are spinning your wheels. You're putting in the work, but your skills aren't improving. The numbers aren't going up. This is the most dangerous time. This is when most people quit. They don't realize that the work is still happening beneath the surface. The river is still carving the rock, even if you can't see it. The consistent person trusts the process. They keep flowing. Discipline gets you to show up the first time. Consistency is what has you showing up the 100th time, the 1000th time. It is the quiet, unglamorous, methodical force that multiplies your effort. It is the understanding that greatness is not an event, it is a process. It is the accumulation of thousands of small, forgotten, seemingly insignificant choices. It is the rhythm of the hammer. It is the flow of the river. It is the unsexy, undeniable power of showing up again and again and again.
Chapter 3. The currency of a life. Respecting the power of time. The Roman philosopher Seneca once wrote a letter to his friend Paulinus, chiding him, and all of us, for a peculiar and tragic hypocrisy. "You will find no one willing to share out his money," he observed, "but how much does each of us divide up his life?" He found it astonishing. We guard our property with locks and alarms. We get angry if someone steals our wallet. We meticulously track our bank accounts. Yet when it comes to our time, the one asset that is truly finite, the one thing we can never get back, we are profligates. We let it be stolen by trivialities, frittered away on nonsense, and given away to anyone who asks. We act as if we have an infinite supply of it. "It is not that we have a short time to live," Seneca concluded, "but that we waste a lot of it." This is the third and perhaps most profound variable in our equation: time. It is the silent, invisible multiplier. Discipline and consistency are the engine and the fuel, but time is the open road that allows them to build up to an unstoppable speed. Without time, even the most disciplined and consistent efforts amount to nothing. But like Seneca's contemporaries, we treat time as an enemy. It's something to be killed when we're bored, something we feel is running out when we're stressed. We see the passage of time as a source of anxiety, the ticking clock, the approaching deadline, the graying hair in the mirror. We look for life hacks and productivity tricks to beat time, to cram more and more into each day, as if life were a race to check off the most boxes. We have it backward. Time is not the enemy, it is the ally. It is the fertile ground in which our efforts compound. It is the grand cosmic force that turns acorns into oaks, calves into oxen, and daily habits into destiny. The Stoics had a practice for cultivating this proper respect for time. It was a simple, stark reminder they kept at the forefront of their minds. Memento mori. Remember, you must die. To modern ears, this sounds morbid, depressing. Why would anyone want to dwell on that? But for the Stoics, memento mori was not a source of despair. It was a source of liberation. It was a tool of clarification. It was not a death wish. It was a life wish. Thinking about your death is the ultimate filter. It strips away the non-essential, the petty grievances, the fear of what others think, the mindless distractions you fill your days with. They all shrivel into insignificance when held up against the stark reality of your mortality. As Steve Jobs, a modern Stoic in many ways, said in his famous Stanford commencement address, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." Memento mori is what allows you to ask the most important question: am I spending my time on what truly matters? Consider the cautionary tale of the brilliant writer Truman Capote. After the stunning success of In Cold Blood, he was the toast of New York society. He was a genius. He had the discipline to research and write a masterpiece. He had consistency. But then he squandered his time. He spent the next 2 decades dining out on his past success, drowning in gossip, parties, and alcohol. He talked endlessly about his next great novel, Answered Prayers, but he never finished it. He let the precious currency of his remaining years drain away on things that did not matter. Time, which had once been his ally, became the witness to his slow decline. He had forgotten the ultimate deadline. Now, contrast this with the story of a man who started selling fried chicken from a roadside motel in Kentucky. He was in his 60s. By most standards, his life was already over. He had been a fireman, a steam engine stoker, a railroad conductor, and a failed lawyer. He was collecting his first Social Security check. But Harlan Sanders had a recipe, and he had the discipline and consistency to work it. He was relentless. He drove across the country, sleeping in his car, trying to convince restaurant owners to franchise his chicken. He was rejected over 1,000 times. What did he have that Capote lost?
He had an urgent sense of his remaining time. He didn't have decades to waste. He knew that every day mattered. He couldn't afford to be distracted. Time wasn't something he was killing. It was the precious resource he was investing in his singular vision. Colonel Sanders didn't start KFC in spite of his age. He succeeded because of it. His awareness of his limited time gave him a focus that a younger, more complacent man might have lacked. Time is the great clarifier. It will expose the fraud and reward the genuine. So how do we stop squandering it and start investing it? First, we must learn to say no. Every time you say yes to something, you are saying no to something else. A yes to a pointless meeting is a no to an hour of deep work. A yes to scrolling through social media is a no to reading a book. A yes to other people's priorities is a no to your own. Memento mori is the ultimate justification for saying no. Your time is your life. Guard it fiercely. Second, we must distinguish between the urgent and the important. This is a trap we all fall into. The tyranny of the urgent. The ringing phone, the incoming email, the quick question from a colleague. These things feel urgent, so we drop everything to deal with them. But are they important? Do they align with our deepest values and our long-term goals? The truly productive person, the person who respects their time, ruthlessly prioritizes the important even when it isn't urgent. They are playing the long game. Third, we must give our time a job. Don't just have a vague to-do list, have a schedule. Block out time for the things that matter. That which is scheduled gets done. A 2-hour block on your calendar labeled Work on Project X is a fortress. It's a commitment you have made to yourself, a preemptive investment of your life's currency. Time is not a predator hunting us. It is a vast, powerful, and neutral force. It is the medium in which our choices bear fruit. Every disciplined action, every consistent effort is a seed. Time is the soil, the rain, and the sun that allows those seeds to grow. You are spending your life every single day. The only question is whether you are spending it on things that are worth the price. That is the power of time. It is the currency of your one precious life. Spend it well.
Chapter 4. The Tipping Point. When effort becomes effortless. For years, nobody paid much attention to the strange, clunky website that sold books. To the outside world, Amazon.com in the late 1990s was a curiosity, another fleeting .com that was, by all conventional metrics, a failure. It lost money, mountains of it. Wall Street analysts scoffed. Pundits predicted its imminent demise. They saw a company spending wildly with no clear path to profitability. They saw chaos. But inside the company, Jeff Bezos and his team were not focused on the outside world. They were focused on a drawing, a sketch on a napkin that depicted a virtuous cycle, a loop. It looked like a child's drawing of a gear. They called it the flywheel. A flywheel is a massive, heavy metal disc. To get it moving takes immense, heroic effort. The first push barely nudges it. The second is just as hard. For a long, long time, you push and push, sweating, straining, and the wheel only inches forward. It feels impossible. Your progress is imperceptible. This is the stage where any sane person would quit. But the Amazon team kept pushing. They believed that if they could lower prices, more customers would come to the site. More customers would attract more third-party sellers who wanted access to that customer base. More sellers would expand the selection and competition, which would further drive down prices. And this whole loop, this self-reinforcing cycle, would be powered by a relentless focus on the customer experience, funded by a lower cost structure. One push, then another, then another. They lowered prices. They improved logistics. They introduced reviews. They obsessed over delivery times. Each action was a single, difficult push on the massive, unmoving flywheel. For years, the results were agonizingly slow. And then, one day, the wheel completes its first full turn.
The second turn is easier. The third, easier still. The flywheel's own weight, which was once the source of resistance, now becomes the source of its power. It starts to build momentum. Suddenly, the pushing is no longer a strain. The wheel is now helping you. It spins faster and faster, seemingly on its own, with an inexorable force. It becomes a juggernaut. This is the tipping point. It is the moment our equation bears its spectacular fruit. It is a moment that discipline times consistency raised to the power of time equals momentum. Notice the change. Time is no longer just a multiplier. It has become an exponent. The results are no longer linear. They are exponential. This is not magic. It is physics. It is the payoff for all the unglamorous, unseen work that came before. Think of water in a kettle. You apply a disciplined, consistent heat source. For a long time, nothing seems to be happening. The water gets warmer, but it's still just water. 100 degrees, 150 degrees, 211 degrees. From the outside, 211-degree water looks exactly the same as 100-degree water. All that energy, all that time, and for what? It's just hot water. This is the plateau. This is the moment of doubt. This is where most people turn off the stove. But if you keep the heat on just a little longer, at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, everything changes. The water erupts into steam. It undergoes a phase transition. That steam can now power a locomotive. It can move mountains. The 1-degree difference between 211 and 212 is greater than all the degrees that came before it. It's the difference between a puddle and a power source. This is the tipping point. It's what the author Malcolm Gladwell described as that magic moment when an idea, trend, or social behavior crosses the threshold, tips, and spreads like wildfire. We see it in history. A political movement toils in obscurity for decades, holding small rallies, handing out pamphlets. They're dismissed as cranks. Then suddenly, they are a revolution. We see it in business. A startup grinds for years, burning through cash, on the verge of collapse. Then suddenly, its product is everywhere. We see it in nature. The Chinese bamboo tree spends its first 4 years underground, building a massive, unseen root system. In its 5th year, it explodes, growing up to 90 feet in just 6 weeks. The world only sees the 90-foot tree. It only sees the revolution. It only sees the billion-dollar company. It calls it an overnight success. This is the great seductive delusion. It's a failure to see the flywheel. It's a denial of the 4 years the bamboo spent in the dark. It's forgetting the long, slow heating of the water. You will feel this in your own life. You will be pushing your own flywheel. You will be writing every day and no one will read it. You will be going to the gym and the scale won't move. You will be putting in the work and the promotion will go to someone else. You will be on the plateau. You will be at 211 degrees. This is the most dangerous phase. This is when the voice of reason sounds exactly like the voice of cowardice. It's not working. You're wasting your time. You look like a fool. So how do you know if you are approaching the tipping point? What are the signs? They are subtle at first. You will find that things become slightly easier. The words come a little more freely. You add one more rep to your workout without thinking about it. An old client refers a new one out of the blue. An opportunity lands in your lap that you didn't directly chase. People start asking you for advice. This isn't luck. This is the flywheel beginning to turn. It is the universe rewarding your persistence. Your reputation has begun to precede you. Your skills have compounded to a point of unconscious competence. The system you built, with discipline and consistency, lubricated by time, is starting to work for you. Your only job, when you feel these first glimmers, is not to stop pushing. Do not get complacent. Do not take your foot off the gas. This is the time to double down. The tipping point is not a destination. It is a gateway. It is the moment you graduate from pushing a rock uphill to riding an avalanche. Forget the overnight success. There is no such thing. There is only the long, slow, brutal, and ultimately beautiful process of pushing the flywheel. Trust the physics. Trust the equation. Keep pushing. The tipping point is closer than you think.
Chapter 5. Riding the Wave. How to sustain and direct your momentum. In 1812, Napoleon Bonaparte was the master of Europe. He was more than a man. He was a phenomenon. His momentum seemed like a law of physics. Kingdom after kingdom had fallen before his Grande Armée. He had built the most powerful flywheel the world had ever seen, forged through the discipline of the French Revolution, the consistency of his military reforms, and more than a decade of relentless campaigning. The tipping point was long past. He was riding an avalanche of his own making. And so he turned his eyes to Russia. His advisors pleaded with him. It was a fool's errand. The logistics were impossible, the distances vast, the Russian winter unforgiving. But Napoleon's ears were deafened by the roar of his own momentum. He had come to believe that the wave he was riding was a testament to his own divine genius. He mistook the force of the flywheel for his own personal strength. He believed that because he had willed it to move, he could steer it anywhere, even into the heart of a Russian winter. He gathered more than 600,000 men, the largest European army ever assembled, and marched on Moscow. He was not defeated by the Russian army. He was defeated by his own success. He was defeated by ego. He was defeated by the unchecked, undirected force of his own momentum. The same wave that had carried him to the pinnacle of power was the one that crashed him onto the frozen plains of Russia, leaving his army and his empire in ruins. This is the great, terrifying paradox of success. The very forces that carry you to the top are the ones that can most spectacularly destroy you. We spend all our energy learning how to build momentum. We rarely spend a moment considering how to handle it. We are so focused on getting the flywheel to spin that we don't realize it can spin out of control and tear the whole machine apart. Success isn't a finish line. It's a new, more dangerous battlefield, one littered with the corpses of victors who couldn't handle their victory. On this battlefield, 3 great enemies lie in wait. The first enemy, ego. Ego is the a-hole in all of us, the one who whispers in our ear after a victory, "You did it, you're special, the rules don't apply to you anymore." Ego is what turned Napoleon's strategic genius into arrogant recklessness. It's what tells the successful CEO to stop listening to her team, the best-selling author that he doesn't need an editor, the champion athlete that he can get away with anything. The moment you start believing your own hype is the moment you are doomed. As the legendary basketball coach John Wooden said, you should be concerned if you start to believe what you read in the papers when they are praising you. Your momentum is a result of the process, the discipline, the consistency, the humility to learn. Ego convinces you it was all because of you and that you no longer need the process. It is the most potent poison for a spinning flywheel. The second enemy is complacency. If ego is arrogance, complacency is its lazy cousin. It's the feeling that you've made it, you've arrived, the work is done, you can finally put your feet up. In 2007, BlackBerry was the Napoleon of the smartphone world. They had total dominance. Their flywheel was spinning at a dizzying speed. When Apple unveiled the iPhone, a device with no physical keyboard, a terrible battery, and a slow network, the executives at BlackBerry laughed. They were complacent. They believed their wave was unstoppable, that the world would always want what they were selling. They stopped pushing. They stopped innovating. They stopped being paranoid. They admired their flywheel instead of continuing the hard work that got it spinning. We all know how that story ended. Complacency is the rust that seizes the gears. Momentum is a fire that needs constant tending. The moment you stop feeding it with effort and innovation, it begins to die out. The third enemy is burnout. This enemy is more subtle. It's not about arrogance or laziness, but about addiction. You can become addicted to the momentum itself. The thrill of the win, the constant motion, the feeling of productivity. You start to believe you must always be pushing, always be accelerating. You sacrifice sleep, health, and relationships at the altar of the flywheel. You forget that even an engine needs maintenance. You forget that the soil needs time to lie fallow.
You push and push until something breaks. Your body, your mind, your family. The momentum you worked so hard to build comes to a screeching halt, not because of an external force, but because the engine driving it has seized. Burnout isn't a badge of honor. It's a symptom of a system out of control. So how do you ride the wave without drowning? How do you command your momentum instead of being commanded by it? You need a rudder. You need a compass. You need a North Star. A North Star is your purpose, your mission, your why. It's the fixed point in the sky that does not move no matter how fast you are going or how chaotic the seas become. It is a principle or a cause that is bigger than your own success, bigger than your ego. For Marcus Aurelius, the North Star was simple: serve the people of Rome and live a life of virtue. This was his guide. When he won a great victory, his North Star kept his ego in check. His job was not to be a great conqueror, but a good servant. When the empire was at peace, it fought off complacency. There was always more to do to improve the lives of his people. When he was tired, it gave him the strength to get out of bed in the morning. His purpose was to work as a human being. A North Star provides the direction that turns raw momentum into true progress. It tames the ego because the mission is more important than you are. You are just a vessel for the work. It fights complacency because a true purpose is never fully achieved. There is always more to learn, more to build, more to contribute. It prevents burnout by providing clarity. It helps you distinguish between motion and action, between being busy and being effective. It gives you permission to say no to the opportunities that, while flattering, do not serve the ultimate mission. It allows you to rest, not as a sign of weakness, but as a strategic necessity to be able to serve the cause tomorrow. Ask yourself, what is my North Star? What is the purpose behind my ambition? Is it just to be successful? Is it just to make money? Those are too vague. They are not rudders. They are sirens luring you onto the rocks. A true North Star is something you can orient yourself by in the darkest storm. I want to build a company that empowers small businesses. I want to create art that makes people feel less alone. I want to be a parent who raises kind, resilient children. Once you have your North Star, you have a filter for your decisions. When you are faced with a new opportunity, a new demand on your time, you don't ask, is this good for my career? You ask, does this serve the mission? Building momentum is a science. Sustaining it is an art. It is the art of staying humble when you're winning, staying hungry when you're full, and staying sane in the midst of the beautiful, terrifying, and powerful wave you have created. Look to your North Star. It will show you the way.
Chapter 6. The obstacle is the fuel. Using setbacks to build more momentum. On a December evening in 1914, a massive explosion tore through the West Orange, New Jersey industrial complex of Thomas Edison. 10 buildings, containing almost the entirety of his life's work, prototypes, research notes, priceless records, were engulfed in flames. Fire departments from 8 nearby towns rushed to the scene, but the chemical-fueled inferno was too powerful. The work of a lifetime was turning to ash. Edison's 24-year-old son, Charles, frantically searched for his father, expecting to find him shattered, broken by the loss. He finally found him near the fire, his face ruddy in the glow, his white hair blowing in the winter wind. My heart ached for him, Charles would later recall. He was 67, no longer a young man, and everything was going up in flames. He spotted me and shouted, "Charles, where's your mother? Go get her. They'll never see a fire like this again." When Charles looked astonished, Edison pulled him aside. "It's all right," he said. "We've just got rid of a lot of junk." The next morning, standing amidst the smoking ruins, Edison told a reporter, "I'm 67, but I'm not too old to make a fresh start." Then he gathered his remaining employees and, using the momentum of the disaster itself, announced, "We're rebuilding." He had already started planning the reconstruction, securing loans, and salvaging what he could. Within 3 weeks, many of his employees were back to work, and the factory would go on to make nearly $10 million in revenue the following year. This story is absurd. It defies our every instinct about how a person should react to a catastrophic failure. We expect despair, rage, blame, paralysis. We expect the flywheel, which Edison had been pushing his entire life, to grind to a permanent, screeching halt. But Edison understood a principle that the Stoics had perfected 2 millennia earlier. He knew a secret about momentum that escapes almost everyone. A setback is not the end of momentum. An obstacle is not a stop sign. The obstacle is the fuel. What happens when your momentum, that beautiful force you've built through discipline, consistency, and time, smacks headfirst into a wall? The project fails. You get fired. The market crashes. You get a devastating diagnosis. Your partner leaves you. The wall seems absolute. The wave you were riding has crashed into a cliff. Our first reaction is always the same. We curse the wall. We rage at its unfairness. We stare at the wreckage of our wave and mourn its loss. We tell ourselves, it's over. I failed. We internalize the external event. We let the obstacle become a judgment on our character, on our worth. And in doing so, we give it the power to halt us completely. The Stoic philosopher and Roman emperor Marcus Aurelius would have called this an error in perception. He wrote in his journal a line that could be the motto for this entire chapter: "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Read that again. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not a pithy affirmation. It is not positive thinking. It is a strategic weapon. It's a framework for seeing the world not as it is, but for what it can be. Edison didn't see a ruinous fire. He saw a spectacular bonfire and a chance to get rid of junk. The obstacle, the fire, became the catalyst for action, rebuilding better and faster than before. The disaster itself was the fuel for the comeback. Think of a forest fire. From one perspective, it is pure destruction, but from another, it is a necessary act of creation. The fire clears out the dead undergrowth, allowing sunlight to reach the forest floor. It cracks open certain types of pine cones, releasing their seeds. The ash left behind enriches the soil. The fire is not the end of the forest. It is the violent, chaotic, but essential catalyst for its rebirth, stronger and healthier than before. This is what setbacks offer us, if we have the courage to see them this way. A failed business venture isn't just the loss of money. It's a brutally honest MBA in what doesn't work. A harsh criticism of your work isn't just an insult. It's free, if painful, consulting that reveals a weakness you were blind to. Getting fired isn't just a rejection. It's a sudden, clarifying freedom to pursue the path you should have been on all along. The obstacle contains information. It contains a lesson. That lesson is the fuel. So how do we become like Edison? How do we stop being paralyzed by our obstacles and start using them as fuel? It's a 3-step process, a kind of mental alchemy practiced by the Stoics. First, control the perception. This is the moment right after the impact, the moment of shock. Your job here is to do one thing. Do not panic. Do not make it a catastrophe. Separate the event from the story you tell yourself about the event. I lost my job is an event. My life is over is a story. The product launch failed is an event. I'm a failure is a story. The Stoics would call this objective representation. See the thing for what it is, stripped of your emotional baggage. A fire is just a fire. A job loss is just a job loss. This calm, steady perception is what allows you to move to the next step. Second, direct the action. Once your perception is under control, you must act, not with grand, sweeping gestures, but with the smallest possible next step. Edison's first action wasn't to rebuild the entire factory. It was to find his wife and tell her to watch the show.
Then it was to talk to his son. Then it was to gather his employees. What is the one thing you can do right now? You don't control the wall, but you control your response to it. Can you make a phone call? Can you write one sentence? Can you go for a walk to clear your head? This is discipline, re-emerging from the wreckage. Find the smallest possible handle on the situation and turn it. Third, extract the fuel. This is the most important step. After you have stabilized the situation, you must perform an unflinching post-mortem. What went wrong? What can I learn from this? What weakness did this obstacle expose in my process, in my character? What junk did this fire clear away? You must treat the failure as a data point, as a tuition paid for a valuable lesson. This lesson, this extracted wisdom, is the fuel. You use it to reinforce your flywheel. You use it to rebuild, but this time you rebuild stronger, smarter, and more resilient. A person who masters this doesn't just survive setbacks, they thrive on them. They become, in the words of the writer Nassim Taleb, anti-fragile. They don't just resist shocks, they get better from them. Their momentum doesn't just restart after a failure, it restarts with more power because the engine has been upgraded with the very lessons the failure provided. The path to achieving anything great is littered with obstacles. There is no version of this journey where the flywheel spins forever without hitting a bump, a wall, or a catastrophic fire. The question is not whether you will face obstacles. The question is what you will do with them. Will you let them be the end of your story, or will you see them for what they are? An impediment to action, an opportunity to advance. Raw, potent, and powerful fuel for the fire you were meant to build.
Chapter 7. The Long Game. A Philosophy for a Lifetime of Momentum. When he was 90 years old, the great cellist Pablo Casals was asked by a young reporter why he continued to practice for 3 hours every day. Casals, by then, had redefined his instrument. He had performed for kings and presidents. His name was synonymous with mastery. He had nothing left to prove to anyone. "Why do you still practice?" the reporter asked. Casals looked at him and said, simply, "Because I think I'm making progress." Think about that for a moment. After a lifetime of dedication, at the absolute pinnacle of his craft, he still saw himself as a work in progress. He was not practicing for the next concert. He was not practicing for fame or for money. He was practicing for its own sake. He was practicing because that's who he was. He was a man in the process of becoming. This is the final and most important evolution of our equation. It's where the formula transcends a mere tactic for achieving a specific goal and becomes a philosophy for living a life of meaning. It's where we stop asking, "How can I use momentum?" and start asking, "How can I live in a state of momentum?" This is the long game. The previous chapters have given you the weapons, the discipline to start, the consistency to continue, the respect for time, the knowledge of the tipping point, the North Star to guide you, and the alchemy to turn obstacles into fuel. This chapter is about the mindset of the warrior who wields them not just for a single battle, but for a lifetime campaign. We live in a culture obsessed with the finish line, the exit, the retirement party, the moment we can finally say, "I've made it," and put our feet up. We see life as a series of projects to be completed, a checklist to be ticked off. We endure the work so we can get to the reward. The master, the true craftsman, the person playing the long game, knows this is a fool's errand. They know there is no finish line. As the Zen proverb says, the obstacle in the path is the path. The long game reframes this. The work is not the means to an end. The work is the end. Pablo Casals wasn't enduring his practice to get to a destination. The practice was the destination. The daily act of showing up, of seeking that small improvement, of being in communion with his craft,
That was the point. That was the prize. So what does it look like to adopt this philosophy? It means internalizing a few core principles. First, the work is never done. The amateur thinks in terms of projects. I will write a book. The master thinks in terms of practice. I am a writer. One is a temporary state, the other is an identity. When you adopt an identity, the work is never finished. A writer writes, a runner runs, an artist creates. You don't stop when the book is published or the race is over. You keep going, because that is who you are. The goal is not to arrive at a state of having done, but to live in a state of doing. This is the source of endless momentum, because the purpose is not a destination, but the path itself. Second, fall in love with the process, not the prize. The prize is external. It's the trophy, the promotion, the public recognition. These things are fleeting and they are largely outside of our control. To attach your happiness and sense of worth to them is to build your house on the sand. The process, however, is internal. It is the work itself, the daily discipline, the rhythm of consistency, the small satisfaction of a problem solved or a sentence well turned. This is what you control. The long game is won by those who derive their joy from the pushing of the flywheel, not from the parade that may or may not be thrown in their honor once it's spinning. This is pure stoicism, finding a citadel of calm and satisfaction in what is up to us and being indifferent to what is not. Third, become a lifelong student. Socrates, one of the wisest men who ever lived, was famous for saying one thing: I know that I know nothing. This wasn't false modesty. It was the engine of his wisdom. The moment you believe you are an expert, your learning stops. Your momentum stalls. Ego and complacency, the great enemies we discussed, take root. The person playing the long game remains a student always. They read, they ask questions, they seek out people who are smarter than they are. They are not afraid to look foolish in the pursuit of knowledge. Like Casals, they believe they are still making progress because they know the mountain of what they don't know is infinitely vast and wondrous. This is the ultimate shift. The equation is no longer just a tool you pick up to build a business or get in shape. It becomes the operating system for your entire life. Discipline is no longer a chore. It is the joyful act of forging your character. Consistency is no longer a tactic. It is the comforting rhythm of your days. Time is no longer an enemy. It is the canvas on which you paint your life's work. Momentum is no longer just for a project. It is the forward motion of your soul. We began this journey with Milo of Croton and his calf, a simple story of a simple process. Day after day, he showed up. He did the work. He embraced the small, incremental, unglamorous effort. He played the long game. He did not become a legend in a day or a week or a year. He became a legend over a lifetime of showing up. And so it is for us. What we build with this philosophy is more than a career. It's more than a skill. It's more than a bank account. What we build is a life of substance, a life of integrity, a life that has weight and meaning because it was forged in the fire of daily effort, not conjured from a lucky break. The world will continue to chase the shortcuts. They will buy the lottery tickets. They will look for the hack. They will try to be the earthquake. Let them. You have a better way. You have the timeless, unsexy, and unstoppable power of the flywheel. You have the wisdom of the river. You have a law as real as gravity on your side. The only question that remains is what you will do with it. The work is waiting. The path is clear. The calf is waiting.